Tonight, we're going to look back at some of our biggest stories from last year, from helping people cool off in the summer heat to Measure 110. We're also going into the vault to remember the soccer great Pele, who died last week. Back in the late 70s, Pele played his last competitive match ever right here in Portland. And we'll take a look at the failure of the mental health and criminal justice systems that allowed a Washington state man to get out of jail in Vancouver while he was waiting for a bed at the state psychiatric hospital. He is now charged with murdering the owners of a small motel in Idaho. But first, let's look back at last year. It's tonight's big story. We've compiled our list of top stories based on how much they were watched or read on our website, app, or digital platforms. First up, eviction threats from the Yamhill Housing Authority aimed at low-income tenants in Newburgh who dared to install their own window air conditioners during the heat of last summer.
I could get physically sick because you're so hot. In this 100-degree weather, it's horrible.
These women live in Haworth Terrace, a low-rent public housing community run by the Yamhill County Housing Authority.
The Housing Authority argued the window units were a fire hazard. They told us they were trying to work with their tenants, but they had been notified by their federal agency that the window units just had to go. Other types of air conditioners were okay, but the tenants couldn't afford those. And you were not having it. You were quick to react. We got dozens and dozens and dozens of emails from you viewers offering to pay all or part of floor units for those renters. And Kim Stark actually went to Ankeny Hardware and paid for 3 air conditioners. 2 days after our story aired, they were delivered.
Thank you so much. You just have no idea how much this has impacted our community here. Thank you.
Attaway, Kim, and all of you for pitching in. Another story you clicked on and read a lot came from Time magazine. One of their writers named Portland among the world's greatest places in 2022. Now, that caught our attention and yours because, while a lot of us do love Portland, it's definitely going through some issues right now. And it's hard to imagine it as one of the best places in the world last year. But the writer praised the city's bike and pedestrian-friendly attitude, along with a couple of new small hotels and the expansion out at PDX. So, okay. In the early spring last year, we told you about the troubles small-town newspapers were having, and that in Southern Oregon, the entire reporting staff at the Herald and News in Klamath Falls had quit. That included the newspaper's editor and 3 reporters. Well, I checked in on the paper today. It is now putting out fresh stories. I think it has been for quite a while. And there on the right, you can see they are still trying to hire a reporter. Publisher Mark Doby told me today that they have restored the newsroom positions and remain committed to Klamath Falls as the largest local news gathering operation in the Klamath Basin. We also did several stories on Measure 110. That's the new Oregon law that decriminalizes user amounts of every hard drug you can think of and moved millions of dollars in marijuana tax money into programs to help drug users. I talked with the leader of the Multnomah County Sheriff's Office who believes the measure helped the illegal drug trade flourish, especially in the metro area.
The fentanyl pills are counterfeit OxyContin pills. And by decriminalizing that, it's basically legitimized criminal organizations, and the drug possession, use, and sale is just rampant with very little consequences, and it's taken away our tools as police officers to sort of interdict that.
But hold on, said lots of others. They disagreed, including decriminalization advocates like Morgan Godwin there. She's a member of Oregon's Oversight Council for Measure 110.
The cartel does not care that we decriminalize drugs. It could be criminalized again tomorrow. They wouldn't care at all. The only thing that would upset them is if we emphasize safe supply or expanded medications for opioid use disorder, because that would cut into their bottom line.
Oregon's new law is modeled after Portugal, which decriminalized drugs back in 2001. So I talked with the country's leader of that program. What he described is not what Oregon is doing. Portugal offers fast and free treatment for addicts through its universal health care. It also has consequences for those caught using drugs in public. Another story that attracted a lot of attention had to do with one house in southeast Portland. The owner left town and the house sat empty for a time. And then when he returned, squatters had moved in and they were not interested in moving out.
Had some guys they just basically walked into the property, took it over, and my seller doesn't have the resources to get them out.
The homeowner wouldn't talk with us on camera for fear of retaliation from those living on the property. But over the phone, he tells KGW when he asked them to leave, they beat him up, sending him to the hospital. He hasn't been back since, but still pays $1,500 a month for his mortgage.
I mean, all he wants to do is sell, and he can't do it.
Lots and lots and lots of you, over 100,000 people watched that story or read it online. In the meantime, since that story is aired, the owner has finally been able to sell. Have not been able to learn whether the new owner evicted the squatters. A lot of you are also interested in the race for governor. Oregon's race featured for the very first time in history 3 women trying to win the race. While it appeared for a time that Republican Christine Drazen might pull it off, Democrats kept the office that they've held now for 35 years in Oregon with the victory of Democrat Tina Kotek. She will be sworn in as Oregon's next governor next week. Another story with high interest from last year will be with us this year and the next year, and then it just goes on and on. It's tolling. Drivers will have to pay tolls on I-205 and I-5 maybe as early as late 2024, less than 2 years from now. Some county commissioners pushing back on that.
This is an effort to get folks off the road. For most people, that's just not possible. We have to be able to get to work and school.
Department of Transportation leaders say the tolls are needed to help ease traffic jams and that you'll pay less if you avoid rush hours.
Well, again, it depends on the time of day of travel. There's only 1 hour of the day that we're modeling where there be that higher rate. Other times there's a much lower rate. And again, if folks can travel at a different time of day or a different route, or also, a different mode, like by transit, there could be options there.
So there's that. One of Oregon's most notorious murder cases also took another turn and definitely grabbed your interest. It's the case of Michael Franke, who ran Oregon's Department of Corrections. He was murdered, stabbed to death back in 1989. A man named Frank Gable was convicted of the crime and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. 3 years ago, a federal judge ordered Gable set free because of problems with his original trial. The state of Oregon appealed that ruling, and last year, the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals agreed that Gable should be set free. Willamette Week reported on December 20th, so just a couple of weeks ago, that the Oregon Attorney General's office is still not satisfied and has asked the U.S. Supreme Court for a review or reversal of that earlier decision. Stay tuned. This one apparently not over yet. We also covered mental health issues and the way those intersect with the criminal justice system. One of the stories that caught your interest was a unique one from a viewer. Melissa West, who watches this show, came forward to share her story publicly for the first time. In 2019, she was held hostage on Portland's West Burnside after going to a Thorns soccer match with her daughter. Suddenly, she was grabbed by a man in the midst of a mental health crisis who was running from police.
Everything slowed down. I remember just trying to lean over because all the guns were pointed at his head that was to my right, and so I kept trying to lean over, because they said they were going to shoot, and that's all. And I could see the knife, but I knew I couldn't. I knew I wasn't strong enough to overpower him, so I made the decision not to and to plead with him, telling him about my daughter. But you're scaring her. Please don't do this.
She slumped to the ground in an attempt to escape. He went down with her.
And the only thing he said was, "They're going to shoot me." And then I said, "Well, yeah, you're holding." And then, it kind of made sense that he wasn't quite understanding. A normal person would respond, I think, to those emotional pleas.
You would think so. Eventually, he let her go and was arrested by police. Melissa said she was speaking out because she is still frustrated by the lack of change when it comes to helping and dealing with the mentally ill in Portland. She believes victims' rights should get more attention, and it should be easier to force the mentally ill to get help. Those were our most popular stories of last year. If you'd like to learn more about any of them, we have a Best of 2022 story on KGW.com right now. And as always, if you have comments you want to make on any of those, or if you want to point out others you think that were overlooked, bring it on. We'd love your feedback.